So what do you do when you have somebody who's living in a property, you don't know who they are, if they belong there or not? Well, one solution is get a private investigator to help you get more information. A private investigator has been critical in my business. I'm really excited to meet or to share with you a private investigator I've met along the way, Sam Brown. Sam, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Just had a cup of coffee. I'm ready to go. I hear a
Great.
doggy.
Well, I think that's in the background. I think we got that muted. So first off, Sam, where are you located? What area, what part of California are you in?
Northern California. I was born and raised in San Francisco. So the names Katrina and Felicia, I think they are either fourth or fifth generation. They're fifth generation.
Very nice. And so you know the California, and how'd you get into being a private investigator? How long have you been doing it and what got you into it?
Well, the story starts in 1975 when I got out of the military and came back home. I attended City College and I started working for a private investigator for $3 an hour.
Wow.
And yeah.
So it was a get rich quick system, huh?
Oh yeah, I could see the dollars everywhere hanging from the trees. So I reached out and he hired me, and then I hired some other investigators. I worked for other investigators, and when I did, I learned a lot from all of them. So I've had my license. I didn't get my license until 1983. So that makes 2023, 40 years being licensed as a private investigator in California. But I've traveled the world doing this. I figured out my niche of landlord tenant. I've known Daniel Bornstein for over 20 years. And he's one of the top guns that I know in the industry.
He really is. I had him on my channel. I've interviewed him and had my Probate Weekly show. He is one of the best eviction attorneys. He's based in Northern California and knows that market so well. And so that's why I know when you work with him, when I was introduced to you, as working with Daniel, to me, that was a great stamp of approval. How'd you get to start working with Daniel?
I guess it was, I moved over to Cathedral Hill Hotel in San Francisco from the AAA building, I believe. And when I moved there, Daniel was down on Polk Street. I think that's where he still is. And there was a seminar he was presenting, and two of my staff members went to it. And they told me about how exciting the landlord-tenant investigation is going to be. And sure enough, it expanded quite a bit. And it's keeping me busy. It's almost, I don't know, 40% of my business, if not more. And we do a combination of things.
So as anybody who watches movies or TV is familiar with a private investigator investigating divorces and, company espionage. This is a valuable tool that I've used in my business successfully here in Southern California. Share with us what's a typical use case that an attorney or a client would hire a private investigator for a tenant situation?
Well, usually they want to find out whether that tenant is still living there. And we run them through our in-house databases, over 100 billion records. And maybe we'll come up with another address. It doesn't mean they're at the new address, but there's algorithms and a pattern that develops that I can say, okay, if I was going to serve papers on this person, I would go to this address. And that's how I convince myself on what direction I'm going to take in order to incorporate a successful, say, service, surveillance, or report that the tenant is no longer living at your residence, at your property. He or she or they have moved on. They bought a house over here. Is the property homesteaded, which is another factor of evidence, and the rent board. Daniel and I, along with some other attorneys, have testified numerous times at the rent board. And they want me to come in and talk about my experience, but also more importantly, what I found out and to interpret the database information systems.
So this would come into place for, let's say, rent control, where somebody is pretending to be renting there, but really they're subletting it to somebody else, which would violate the terms and therefore give the owner the opportunity perhaps to raise rent or evict the tenant, right? That's what we're talking about?
Yes, we're talking about the ghost tenant, I call them.
Okay.
They get up and they pretend they're still living there. They may have a vehicle registered at that address or registered a boat at that address, which is evidence at the rent board to prove or not or disprove their existence at the property. So the key is to find out where they are and how long they've been there. And if they own property, are they subletting? And there are many sublet letters in San Francisco and the Bay Area, probably nationally as well, that they're seizing the opportunity to take advantage of the landlord by becoming the surrogate landlord or the sub landlord per se, and they end up making a lot of money. And then once they're in, it's kind of hard to figure out who's in the property at the moment sometimes, and the owner may not get wind until much longer before it identified. So the key is to find out, I call it who's who in the zoo. And we have a couple tigers, we have a couple lions, and who are they? Then by database systems, I'm able to generate specifically maybe their identifiers, where they're from, how long they've been in the US maybe, or are they a relative of the tenant? And if they are, they could be just visiting. And there's laws involving visiting and how long a visitor can stay. Specifically in San Francisco, the laws are very strict.
Right.
And they should be, in the sense where the landlords are being taken advantage of when there are tenants subletting or even renting out the spare room. And then once an individual occupies a property, after 30 days, they actually become a tenant based on some of the laws that are out there. I'm not an attorney, but I work for the biggest attorneys in the world, and the smartest ones, more important. And Daniel's one of them, and I know he does a lot of the eviction things, but it's an ongoing process of trying to manage your tenants when you're not sure who's there and who's left and where are they now. That's what I do.
Now, where I'm also involved with private investigators on probate cases is we don't know who the person is in the house, right? So to serve them, you have to know who they are,
Right.
and what basis they have to be there, if any. And then in some cases, like you say, looking for things that they're doing that are illegal, multiple people in the house, illegal activities in the house.
Right.
And so I've had private investigators, even confront the squatters saying, we see this, we're gonna go to the police and help us get them out. Is that, do you get involved that deep on these circumstances?
Well, I guess, as you mentioned, Bill, the word deep. Do I go and knock on the door and confront people who are comfortable living there? And they know that they're not on a lease. And who are you, Sam Brown? And don't be knocking on this door. And then we have other people in the house coming out to confront me at the front door.
Right.
I'm not really excited about knocking on a door and determining who's living there, because that's something that I can do at a distance, whether it's the surveillance outside. There's closed circuit TV cameras that we put in. The problem when you put cameras in, you're going to need to be able to audit them and download the events that occur at the property. If there's people going in and out, how often are they there? And who are they? So if we have a pattern of someone, if we have a bunch of names or just a few names, and they're all female, but there's males coming in and out, then we have to take a second, deeper look at it.
Right.
And then not being afraid to rerun the property address again, just to who am I gonna pick up today?
Right.
And then from there, I mean, the surveillance aspect is very expensive, but it also gives you we can go out and make a movie, and you can't dispute that if you are in a position of doing something illegal, like subletting. And the tenant, we would go, the actual tenant, we would go out the property where we believe he's at or she's at right now. We would videotape them coming out and in and out. An example would be, we would, over a 2-week period, we would do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, maybe a Sunday, early morning, and then catch them in the afternoon coming back till night. Hours in the morning, a few hours in the evening. And then the following week, we would go Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Therefore, we've locked in 7 days over a 2-week period that he or she or they are actually occupying the residence.
Got it.
And then we
Got it.
testify.
Have you ever seen the movie Pacific Heights?
Oh, yeah. My San Francisco Victorian mansion up in Nob Hill. Yeah, I have. That's a scary situation.
But to me, it's realistic.
Oh, yeah. I mentioned that to people that have you ever seen the movie Pacific Heights? And, you know, you got Beetlejuice who's not going to leave. And he started changing locks, building walls, locking out the owner, who was a young couple who bought the building. They were planning to live there or maybe for an investment. But once that tenant moved in, Mike was his name, and he's quite a remarkable actor, and he played a very good role in that movie.
Yeah.
Once you got him in, how do you get him out?
Well, you better get a Daniel Bornstein and maybe you have to hire a Sam Brown to get the information on if you, and I tell people you got to move soon because the longer you wait, the harder it gets.
You're absolutely right, Bill, because they get seated in there, and then say if they're not disabled, and then they become disabled, or they age over the age of 60. I'm one of them. You can't evict someone under the American Disabilities Act, and if they are over 60 in San Francisco, you can't just throw the eviction papers at the door because there's considerations. And then the other avenue that I know Daniel does, along with other attorneys, they buy out the existing tenant. They don't want to leave. And there's an average up between $5,000 to $50,000. And that's a lot of money to get rid of your tenant.
Right.
And you're not getting rid of them as you are kindly asking them to leave. Here's a check.
Right.
Yeah.
So, okay. So, and are you involved in that process? Or how are you involved in that process? The research phase? Do you actually meet with the client and offer them a check to move out, or ask
no,
them
I
how
can
much they're
hand
looking for?
deliver one to them and let them know this is a good opportunity. I mean, I'm not an attorney. I'm not really a representative of Dan unless he wants me to be, or a realtor or a landlord. So getting involved myself may constitute some kind of a, you know, oh my God, there's a private investigator. He's 6'4", 240, knocking at my door.
Right.
Got a check in his hand. What do I do? Maybe call the police and start documenting that they're being threatened by the big guy from the landlord lawyer. You know.
Oh, come on. You're a big teddy bear. Come on.
Well, I am, and my daughters can testify that on a good day, as long as I don't raise my voice.
Good day.
Hey, get out! It's time to get out. Let's go. But it's a process, and the closed circuit TV stuff, we've installed them at the opposite end of the hallway where there's no expected privacy in the hallway, but there is expected privacy in the garage. And I had a case involving someone I grew up with that owns property, and he and the 2 tenants were in the garage, and my friend from junior high school wasn't thinking straight, and he recorded their conversation. Well, the 2 tenants happened to be attorneys, and they walked away with $50,000. I think they're still living there. So the laws have to be adhered to and followed, and if there's any confusion, seek out legal advice.
So if a landlord wants to find out more about a situation, they want you to investigate, what's the typical cost to get started, and what's the typical case run to get the information?
It's a good question. I charge $125 an hour, generally with a 4-hour minimum. That's $500. But for Daniel and a few other existing clients, I'll charge $185. That will be our in-house database system. There's quite a bit of information there, social websites, and that's going to allow me to generate their identifiers, because you need to make sure you have the right person. There could be a Sam Brown, and then there's a Sam Brown Senior.
Mm.
And birthdates would come up, and you have all that information, and there's a ton of it, but you want to be able to manage that, reporting back to the client landlord that we got them over here, and they're actually not here. They're in your property. That's the son.
Right.
So that's where I come in to gather that information, and then on surveillance, 125 an hour, 8 hours. That's $1,000 a day.
Got it. But if you find out who's in the property or what's going on with property,
Yeah, we need to
don't
find
save
out.
it.
If I can interrupt, we need to find out who's living there, who's coming
Right.
in and out.
Right.
And the early bird catches the worm.
Yeah.
And if you're leaving in the morning early, most likely you spent the night.
I get more involved with eviction, more in Southern California than Northern, but all the time I tell clients, the sooner you get on this problem, the sooner you solve it and the less expensive it is. And I'm right now trying to close a transaction that we're, weeks later because we just couldn't get the tenant out soon enough. Now we do have them out finally, but it just dragged everything out. So it seems like a reasonable amount of money to get a handle on a situation. Sam, if somebody wanted to contact you to retain you or get more information about retaining you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
The easiest way to remember in the podcast with my website would be sambrowninvestigations.com. And my email, of course, is there, which is sbgroup@att.net, and directly with my business line of 415-621-5918.
There you go. Sam Brown Investigations is the website. And
When you need to know.
There's the phone number, the 415 phone number, and the SB group at att.net is all the contact information.
There it is.
Sam, I really appreciate the chance to chat with you again. Look forward to working with you again soon. And I do appreciate Daniel Bornstein's been the gift that's been that keeps on giving for my business. I appreciate working with a professional like him and working with you and your team. Thank you so much for your time today.
Well, thank you, Bill. I appreciate it. I just lost a daughter, but I can always find her.
Sure. So she needs money. I'm sure you'll find out from her again.
Yeah.
Did I say that? I didn't mean to. Have a good one. Hold on.